Hi everyone, I'm Angie, partner and VP of Marketing at CROING, a women-funded and women-led creative agency. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome you to another edition of our newsletter, Women Who Network, Stories of Connection and Success. As I always say, networking has played a key role in my career, and I have found through many conversations that it is an area that many women still don't feel confident in or need a little push to be encouraged to explore further. At CROING, we're motivated to inspire and empower women to feel more confident in networking, and we believe that by sharing stories and experiences, we can encourage them to connect and grow together. I'm super excited to introduce our special guest today, Yvette Davis. Thank you so much for joining us and for being part of this initiative. I'm confident that your story will motivate many women to embrace networking with more confidence. Please let us know more about you. Can you introduce yourself to our community?
Yeah, of course. First, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this amazing movement. I truly believe, as you said, that, your network is your net worth, and there's so much value in connecting. And you are just an amazing connector. Like, this platform is bringing so many people to learn about others and just be able to connect. So that is truly amazing. Excited to be here. Once again, as you mentioned, my name is Yvette Davis. I currently am the director of digital growth for Dave and Buster's Incorporated. So that includes the brand we all know, Dave and Buster's, but we also own Main Event, which is a brand that not a lot of people know because it has more of a regional footprint. And so my responsibilities really include, ownership of our digital platform strategy across web, app, and kiosk, as well as owning our owned and paid media strategies. So get to do a lot and ensure end-to-end consumer journey is, seamless and frictionless for our guests.
That's so cool. Thank you so much for being here. When did you start networking, and how has your perspective evolved from when you first started to now?
For me, so as people get to know me, they realize I have this really big gregarious personality. Like, my friends consider me the social butterfly. My friends actually consider me a connector, but that didn't often translate into my professional environment. That's definitely something that is easy for me. Like, my parents always say, Yvette doesn't meet a stranger when it comes to like me as a personal and then my personal life. But my professional life, I really have had to push myself to just, meet people, be the one to start a conversation, going to networking events and randomly walking up to tables with other people and being like, hey, like, I'm gonna jump in here. My name is Yvette. But I would say probably around grad school is when I realized the power of networking. I went straight from undergrad into grad school. And so a lot of people in my classes had been in the work environment for years. And so it took me being able to push myself to network to just really unlock that business acumen mindset, because I needed to rely on their work experience to help me understand some of the case studies that we really worked through in our program. And so from there, networking has unlocked job opportunities. It's unlocked, people helping me just navigate different career situations. And it's just something that now I'm preaching to the choir. Like, make sure that you find that community that you can network with, that you can learn from. Even as I continue to grow in my career, like, I will cold reach out to someone on LinkedIn and be like, hey, I see that you're a VP in this role. I eventually want to get there. Can you just give me some advice? And often when you're asking for advice, you realize that people are so willing in this situation to just tell you their story.
That's so cool. And thank you so much for sharing. And I wanted to share something based on what you said about being a social butterfly or extrovert, but not necessarily being able to apply it to the professional life. And that's really interesting because I specifically asked this question to help women realize that none of us, or the majority of us, didn't started being good at networking and being out there, and it's not like success was there from the beginning when it came to, and even though you were an extrovert, it's not the same. It's not the same to do it in a professional environment because, when you want to meet someone, and this we can even apply for professional settings, but you can introduce yourself and talk about you, your likes and dislikes and stuff. But sometimes when you're doing it in a professional environment, you think that you need to start with something that is related to your profession, your job position, and it gets harder if you want to do it like that. But there are a lot of tips and tricks in order to blend blend those two and even be more effective when you want to be remembered by stuff. It might not be by your job position or your company, but other stuff. So thank you so much for bringing that up. And what do you do to establish genuine and meaningful connections when you network?
For me, it's like also just thinking about like a value exchange, not necessarily like asking someone for something, but it's almost like dating. Like you got to date someone before you get married to them. And so to me, it's, really having that foundation understanding that like, while I may have an end goal in mind, like I'm focused on the long game and really trying to establish like some type of relationship with this person. I think if you focus on establishing a relationship, then like that's building a rapport, that's,
Mhm.
genuinely asking for advice, genuinely understanding that like you don't need to just have your hand out and expect something in return, but like what also can you like help this person with? But at the end of the day, it's really like that key, thing that we always talk about is relationship building.
Yes, totally. And what's the most unexpected opportunity that has come from a networking event or connection?
I would say probably a job opportunity. For example, the world is so small, and I feel like the degrees of separation are even smaller when you start thinking about the marketing world. And so, honestly, just, years ago when I lived in Chicago, I met someone who knew someone else, and like somehow my name came up in conversation, and then that led to an amazing opportunity. And so once again, like I necessarily wasn't looking for anything, but just being exposed to a person at some function and showing up as my authentic self, which for me that's like respect for individual. And so the way I presented myself, they remembered. And then when they heard a random friend, they weren't even in our industry, when they heard a random friend talking about something, they're like, oh, I think I know someone who might be good for that. And then, it kind of jumped from there.
No, that's so cool. And what you just said about presenting as your authentic self, I think is really important because when you're in a network and word about you start circling, it's amazing that you can, present yourself and that everyone who knows you or that hears about you understand like your personality, your vibe. I think that's really important and your goals as well, it's really cool. Do you have any favorite networking events or communities? Give us recommendations. We met at Brand Week,
Yeah.
so that's one event that you've been to, but do you have any more events or communities that you want to share?
Yeah, I think Brand Innovators is probably another fun one that I really like. I feel like when you talk about community and being able to like pull a lot of people together from the different aspects of, marketing and advertising, that's one where I've had a lot of success meeting a lot of different people, establishing friendships at this point that started out as just like a meet and greet. Also, I would say, we mentioned Ad Week, but I would say Media Posts. I've done some sessions with them or gone to some of their summits. They're really intimate. I like that because often when you work on the client side, sometimes you go to these conferences and you don't get to have like one-on-one conversations with other people who are on the client side to really like get learnings and figure out how they're dealing with macroeconomic factors in their industry. And because Media Summit is so intimate, I feel like there's so many opportunities to just have those brand to brand conversations. So those are probably the few that I think have been really beneficial for me.
Thank you so much for sharing. And another question, do you have a question for me? This is a new one for season 2, and I always ask it and then laugh because I'm like, oh my.
I think I would ask you the same thing. Like, what has been, the most interesting thing that's happened to you when it's come from networking?
So this is a cool story. We started reaching out to partners because we were looking for clients when we started, but we said like maybe let's look for partners as well. And as you said, get into this one-on-one conversation with peers and from other agencies and stuff.
Mhm.
And one of those partners invited me to Soho House in LA and we started talking. And he mentioned a platform that I signed up for with the agency. And 2 months later, the city of Miami was looking for an agency at this platform. And we started working with them. So it was thanks to a networking connection that I had. And I didn't expect any specific thing to come out of it, but, meant like advice or one-on-one connection. But then something something came and it was like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, when you trace something amazing that happened to how it started, for us at least, it normally has to do with networking, meeting someone, and
Yeah.
you can do it alone. So that's a specific story that I love
Oh, I
because
love that.
no, and it's pretty cool. So, last question. What advice would you give to women who are hesitant to engage in networking?
Actually, I mean, because I've been there, I understand. What I did for myself is I had to challenge myself. Like, I went to an event and I was like, find three people that you don't know. And that's for me anyway, that was such a small goal. And when like once I spoke to the first person and didn't receive kind of like a negative reaction or anything, because I think a lot of times that's what is a blocker for us, the fear that this person is going to like not want to engage or they're going to be rude. And so after I kind of like, tipped my toe in the water and gave myself this small milestone to hit, it then started to become natural. And then I continued to give myself additional goals. I mean, brand week, we were there a whole week.
Yeah.
My goal at brand week was to meet people, three different people a day. And then, it was like four people once I got the first three. So even in all these years of my career in networking, I still set milestones for myself to force myself to do it. Because what I realized, you can go to an event, see someone that that you've met before and like stick to them and not, talk to anyone else. And so you got to just constantly push yourself, those little mental milestones like, hey, I want to meet somebody new. I want to see what they do. And that's networking too. It doesn't always have to be about a value exchange. It doesn't always be like you're looking for something. It could just be like, let me find out what this person does and hear their story. And then you may be inspired just from like their career journey.
That's so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. It hasn't been talked here at the initiative, like about people that are already networking and maybe meeting same people at different events, how that can happen. And
Yes.
that's really interesting because of course you're gonna pivot to people that you already know and you wanna stick with them and continue talking to the same people. But it's really important to keep growing your network, right? Because it's a never evolving thing. And thank you so much for sharing that. That's something really new that you just share with our audience. And thank you so much for your insights. It's really inspiring to hear how networking has shaped your journey. To all of you listening, reading, or watching, remember your network is your net worth. And Yvette said at the beginning, thank you so much for catching on that. And stay tuned for more inspiring stories in our next edition of Women Who Network, Stories of Connection and Success. If you want to be part or propose someone for this space, please email me to Angie@CROING.com. And until next time, keep networking and grow.